There's a structural transformation happening across the Denver metro area right here, right now. The state of Colorado forced local municipalities to allow secondary structures on single-family lots. The media is calling this a backyard gold mine. They might make it sound like easy money. Here's the reality. Building an accessory dwelling unit requires the exact same logistical planning as building a standard house. You are dealing with strict sewer permits and hidden Denver water tap fees. In this video, we are going to look past the hype. We will analyze the real construction costs, the local zoning compliance, and the hidden financial landmines that can blow up your biggest budget before you break ground. I'm Jeremy Kane, and we are going to do the math on your equity. Let us start by defining the new baseline rules. Colorado House Bill 24-1152 establishes a unified statewide standard that preempts local bans. The state has mandated that designated local governments must implement an administrative approval process for accessory dwelling units, and this had to be done by June 2025. Denver actually moved ahead of this timeline by enacting a citywide measure to align with the state mandate early. That local ordinance expanded accessory dwelling unit eligibility from 36% of residential land to nearly 70%. That's a big jump. The most important takeaway for you as a property owner is the removal of historical friction points. Strict owner occupancy mandates have been eliminated. Local municipalities can no longer force you to reside in a primary home in order to rent out the secondary unit. That specific change transforms your property into a viable income-producing asset for investors who want to live off-site. The state legislation also explicitly voids any homeowner association declarations that prohibit accessory dwelling unit construction. Your HOA is now restricted to enforcing reasonable aesthetic guidelines like exterior siding materials and roof patches. Better check with your HOA first. Understanding the law is just the first step. Now we must look at the financial architecture required to actually build one. A professional installation in the Denver metro area generally ranges from $180,000 to $450,000 or more, depending on your finishes. You have a few different paths to consider. A garage conversion is usually the most cost-effective route, typically requiring between $80,000 and $150,000. Conversely, a brand new detached structure demands the highest capital allocation. Those projects generally cost between $250,000 or $500,000, depending on size and finishes. You need to understand the fixed cost paradox. Smaller units naturally carry a higher cost per square foot than a larger build. Every single project requires the same fixed expenses. You still have to pay for a kitchen, a bathroom, and a municipal permit costs, regardless of the total square footage. A fundamental misunderstanding of soft costs represents the most common point of failure for residential construction. Municipal fees and utility connections can add $30,000 to $50,000 before the ground is even broken. Let us look at the specific landmines. Denver water tap fees are currently phasing in new pricing. A second step of the phase activates on July 1st, 2026. A new service connection for an accessory dwelling unit inside Denver will cost you $2,170. You also need an account for mandatory soil testing across much of the Denver metro area, which adds another $2,000 to $5,000 to your initial budget. You cannot start a project without securing this capital up front. And if you know anything about Denver and our soils, you definitely know you need to make sure that's tested and the building is going to stand up. Now we need to discuss how this impacts your asset yield. An accessory dwelling unit must generate sufficient income for property value appreciation to justify the heavy upfront capital expenditure. A newly constructed detached unit in desirable Denver neighborhoods generates between $1,700 and $2,800 monthly, based strictly on long-term rental cash flow. Property owners should anticipate a break-even timeline of 10 to 15 years. However, an accessory dwelling structure generally increases your primary property value by 20 to 30% of the total construction costs immediately on completion. Those numbers are very general and it really does depend, but it makes you kind of look at the numbers and wonder. We also have to talk about the property tax reality. Colorado conducts property reassessments on a 2-year cycle, and the state implemented a split assessment rate system for 2026. When you build an accessory dwelling unit, the property tax increase is based solely on the added value of the new structure. This introduces what I call the stay versus move dilemma. You need to have to decide if you want to leverage your current property by adding an accessory dwelling unit for long-term cash flow or benefits, or alternatively, you can evaluate the option to cash out your accumulated equity at the top of the market and relocate to a quieter suburban enclave before neighborhood dynamics shift permanently. The truth is, real estate is never one size fits all. Building an accessory dwelling unit is a massive decision that requires looking at both sides of this ledger. Here's an unfiltered reality of what homeowners gain and what they sacrifice. First, the pros. You force immediate equity generation. While you are spending cash to build, you're permanently increasing the baseline value of your largest asset. You also create a stabilized rental unit that provides consistent monthly cash flow. This revenue offsets your primary mortgage or accelerates your broader wealth building strategy. Finally, you gain generational flexibility. A secondary structure provides dedicated private space for aging parents or adult children returning home. Now, for the cons. The upfront costs are heavy and you are making a substantial capital commitment that ties up your immediate liquid capital. You also face significant construction friction. Building an accessory dwelling unit requires months of navigating permits and managing contractors in a live construction zone in your backyard. Adding a structure also increases your property tax burden and requires you to restructure your insurance for landlord liability coverages. Ultimately, you are permanently trading your private backyard space for an income-producing asset. While this sounds great, some people don't necessarily want that. As well, you have to take into consideration time, because a lot of these construction loans require a lot of liquid down. Even if you are mortgaging it, taking that money out, you have to put the money down. Then the property has to be built. It has to pass all the inspections, has to pass a certificate of occupancy, and then, just then, you can start retrieving rental income from the use of that space. So there is a gap period there that you definitely have to think about if you're going to get creative. So here's the deal. Housing is no longer viewed simply as a shelter. Property owners must evaluate their parcels through the lens of long-term asset management. An accessory dwelling is a phenomenal wealth building tool for the right homeowner, but it is a financial landmine for someone expecting a fast and easy return. This is exactly why I talk all the time about knowing what your home's value is worth, and start with a quick CMA QR code scan right here, right now. If that starts a further conversation, reach out, let's have a conversation, and we can look into what you want to. We can see how these new zoning laws impact your specific property. Mathematically, we can build it all out. We can build the dream, build the vision. But please never hesitate to reach out to me on my cell phone, 303-543-1453. And until next time, I'm Jeremy Kane. What's happening in Denver? We're keeping you, the homeowner, in the know so that you are able to make the right decisions for your long-term future in your home and your long-term wealth. We'll talk to you next time.